17 minutes. That's how long heavily pregnant Lily stood outside that door in the rain before she finally walked away. 17 minutes. 8 months pregnant in the middle of a November storm in Lake Forest, Illinois, knocking on a door that had been deliberately locked against her by the one woman who had the power to open it. She counted. She kept looking at the clock on her phone, maybe because counting felt like the only thing she could control. And when she finally got back in her car and drove herself to the emergency room alone, not because she was dramatic, but because something felt wrong, she made a decision in that hospital bed that would change 4 lives completely. She did not cry. She did not call him. She just decided. And the version of Lily Mercer that walked out of Northwestern Memorial the next morning was not the same one who had walked in. This is the story of what those 17 minutes actually cost, and whether love, when it finally shows up and does the work, is ever really enough to pay that back. Damien Voss did not do flowers. He did numbers. He did boardrooms. He did the kind of silence that made grown men straighten their ties without being asked. He ran Voss Financial Group, one of the most powerful private investment firms in the entire Midwest, from a glass tower in downtown Chicago. And he had built that tower practically brick by brick before he was 32 years old. So nobody in his world could explain what happened to him the afternoon he walked into a tiny flower shop on the corner of Maple and 5th in Knoxville, Tennessee. He was only in Knoxville for a conference, 3 days, maybe 4. His assistant had booked him into a hotel that was walking distance from the convention center, and on his first morning there, he had taken a wrong turn looking for coffee and ended up standing in front of a shop with hand-painted letters on the window that said Lily's Blooms. He almost kept walking, but something, probably the fact that he hadn't slept properly in 6 days and his brain wasn't working right, made him stop. The shop smelled like rain and roses and something warm he couldn't name. There were mason jars everywhere, filled with wildflowers and tied with brown twine. There were little handwritten tags on everything. There was soft music playing from somewhere he couldn't see. And behind the counter, half hidden behind a wall of sunflowers, was a girl humming to herself like she had absolutely no idea the rest of the world existed. Her name tag said Lily. He stood there longer than he should have. She eventually looked up, saw him, and said, "You look lost." "I am," he said, which was true, but not just about the coffee. She laughed, not a polite laugh, but a real one, like something had actually caught her off guard, and said, "Well, you're in a flower shop, so either you did something wrong and you're here to fix it, or you just wandered in by accident." "Accident," he said. She tilted her head at him. "You don't look like an accident kind of person." He wasn't, that was the thing. Damien Voss did not do accidents. He did not do unplanned detours or wrong turns or flower shops with hand-painted windows. But he stayed anyway. He bought him a single stem of something yellow. She called it a black-eyed Susan, and he left. And then he came back the next morning, and the morning after that. By the 3rd morning, she had his order ready before he asked. "You're predictable," she told him, sliding the paper cup across the counter. She'd started making him tea because, she said, he looked like someone who needed something gentler than he was used to. "I've never been called that," he said. "Maybe nobody was paying attention," she said, and went back to her flowers. He flew back to Chicago on Friday. By Sunday, he had sent his assistant to book him another trip to Knoxville. They didn't fall fast. That's the thing people get wrong about them when they hear the story later. They think it was instant, some dramatic, movie-style thing where 2 people lock eyes and the world shifts. But it wasn't like that at all. It was slow. It was coffee, well, tea, every morning for 3 weeks. It was him calling her on a Tuesday for no real reason and then claiming he had a business question. It was her sending him a photo of a weird cactus she found at the farmer's market with the caption, "This reminded me of you for obvious reasons." He laughed at that, actually laughed, for longer than he could remember. It was him flying her to Chicago in October just to show her the lake. They walked along Lake Michigan on a cold Saturday afternoon, and she wore a yellow coat that was too light for the weather, and she kept stopping to look at things. A dog wearing boots, a kid flying a kite, an old man feeding pigeons, like everything deserved her full attention. "Are you cold?" he asked. "I'm freezing," she said cheerfully, "but it's so pretty." He bought her a hot chocolate from a cart near the Navy Pier, and she wrapped both hands around it and beamed at him like he had handed her something priceless. He had bought people diamonds. He had bought cars, trips, entire experiences. Nobody had ever looked at him like the way she looked at him over a $4 hot chocolate. He was quietly and completely in trouble. By December, she knew things about him that his business partners of 10 years didn't know. She knew he hated mornings but woke up early anyway because sleeping felt like losing time. She knew he kept a photo of his father, who had died when Damien was 14, in the inside pocket of every jacket he owned. She knew that under all the controlled, precise, untouchable energy he projected, there was a man who just wanted someone to stay. He knew things about her, too. She knew she had grown up in a small house in Knoxville with her grandmother, who had taught her everything about flowers. She knew she'd gotten into a business program at UT, but dropped out after her grandmother got sick because she couldn't leave her. She knew she had never regretted that once. She knew she named her plants and talked to them in the mornings, and she said it wasn't weird, it was just efficient, because plants grew better when you paid attention to them. People are the same way, she told him once, very simply. He thought about that for a long time. He took her to New Orleans for New Year's. They ate beignets at a tiny cafe on Decatur Street at 2 in the morning, powdered sugar everywhere, jazz music floating out of every open door on the block. She tried to teach him to two-step on the sidewalk, and he was terrible at it, and she laughed so hard she had to hold on to a lamppost. "You're terrible," she gasped. "I'm aware," he said, completely unbothered, and tried again. She took his hand to show him the steps again and didn't let go afterward. He didn't point that out. He just held on. In February, he brought her to meet his mother. That was his first mistake. Not because he didn't love his mother. He did, deeply, in the complicated way you love someone who has sacrificed everything for you and also never lets you forget it. Gloria Voss was 61 years old, lived in a sprawling estate in Lake Forest, Illinois, wore her silver hair like a crown, and had very specific ideas about what kind of woman belonged in his son's world. Lily Mercer, with her hand-painted flower shop and her yellow coat and her grandmother's ring on a chain around her neck, was not that woman. And Gloria decided that in approximately 45 seconds. She was polite. She was always polite. Gloria Voss was too smart to be openly rude. She smiled at Lily. She offered her tea. She asked careful questions about her little shop in a tone that made little do a lot of work. And when Lily went to the bathroom, Gloria turned to Damien with the specific look she had been perfecting since she was 16 years old. "She's sweet," Gloria said. "She's extraordinary," Damien said. Gloria smiled. "Of course she is, darling." She didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. Damien knew that tone. He knew what it meant. And instead of addressing it, he let it go, which was his second mistake. He proposed to Lily in April, not with a big production, not with a banner in a restaurant full of people or anything like that, because he knew Lily well enough to know she would have been mortified. He proposed in her flower shop after closing with a ring he had picked out himself, a simple oval diamond set in yellow gold, because she always said she liked things that looked like they had a history. He had the jeweler engrave the inside with the coordinates of the corner of Maple and Fifth where he'd taken a wrong turn. She stared at it for a long moment. "You remembered," she said quietly. "I remember everything," he said, which was true. She said yes, obviously.
But even in the happiness of those months, the planning, the trips, the mornings where he would fly into Knoxville just to have breakfast with her before flying back for afternoon meetings, something was building in the background that neither of them was looking at. Gloria had not warmed up. Gloria had in fact done something much more dangerous than being cold. She had been strategically kind, inviting her to lunches, calling to ask about the shop, while at the same time, quietly, patiently, planting seeds in Damien's mind. "She seems overwhelmed by your world, darling. Has she said anything?" "I just want to make sure she understands what this life actually requires. I met a girl like her once, lovely, but she wanted something simpler eventually. That's not a flaw." None of it was an attack. None of it was something Damien could point to and say, "Stop that." It was water, slowly, slowly wearing down stone. And Damien, who had learned growing up that his mother usually knew things he'd—
Lily should have stayed in the apartment. She knew that, later. Looking back, she could see 100 moments where she could have made a different choice. She could have called Marcus again. She could have called a friend. She could have sat on the couch with her plants and waited. But she was 8 months pregnant, and she hadn't slept in 2 days, and the man she loved was 25 minutes away at his mother's house, and nobody would tell her what was happening to her own life. So she got in her car. The Voss estate in Lake Forest was a 45-minute drive on a good night. In the rain, with the roads the way they were, it took over an hour. She parked in the long driveway and walked to the front door, not fast because she couldn't move fast anymore, and she rang the bell. The lights were on. She could see light through the windows. She could hear, faintly, the sound of a television inside. The door opened. Gloria stood there in a silk robe, hair perfect, expression completely unreadable. "Lily," she said. "Is Damien here?" Lily asked. A pause, very small. "He's resting." "I need to see him. Lily, please, I've been worried sick. I just need to see that he's okay, and I need to talk to him." Gloria looked at her for a long moment. Her eyes went to Lily's stomach, to the obvious, undeniable fact of 8 months of pregnancy, and then back to Lily's face. And something moved across her expression that Lily couldn't read. "He asked not to be disturbed," Gloria said. What?" Lily said. "I'm sorry," Gloria said, and she said it in a tone that was almost gentle. Almost. "This isn't a good time." And she closed the door. The sound of that lock engaging was not loud. It was actually a very small sound, but it was the kind of sound that once you've heard it in a moment like that, you never stop hearing it. Lily stood there on the front step, the rain hitting the back of her neck because the overhang was only so wide, and she stared at the closed door. She rang the bell again. Nothing. She knocked. She called out. She said Damien's name, not loudly, not frantically, but clearly, steadily, because she was trying to hold herself together. The lights stayed on. The television kept going. The door stayed shut. She stood there for 17 minutes. She counted later because she had been looking at the clock on her phone. 17 minutes in the rain, 8 months pregnant, on a cold November night in Lake Forest, Illinois, waiting for a door to open. It didn't open. She drove herself to the emergency room at Northwestern Memorial back in Chicago because she started feeling strange on the highway. Not a pain, exactly, more of a pressure, a tightening that scared her. She called no one on the way because she didn't want to say the words out loud. She parked in the ER lot and walked herself inside and told the nurse at the desk very calmly that she was 8 months pregnant and she needed to be seen. They took her quickly. They hooked her to monitors. They checked the baby, a girl they already knew, and told her that she was experiencing elevated blood pressure and they wanted her to stay overnight for observation. The baby was okay. She was okay, but she needed to rest. She lay in that hospital bed and looked at the ceiling and did not cry. She called Marcus instead. She told him where she was. She told him only what was necessary. Marcus said he'd be there in 20 minutes, and she told him not to rush. She did not call Damien. She did not call Gloria. She lay there in that hospital room with the monitors beeping softly and the rain outside the window,
and she made a decision. Not in a dramatic, sudden way, more like something that had been forming for weeks, just finally had enough pieces to hold its own shape. She was done waiting for a door to open. Damien arrived home to the penthouse at 7 a.m. the next morning. He had been at his mother's, yes, but not because he was hiding. He had driven to his mother's after the Milwaukee meeting ended because he had been struggling, genuinely, privately struggling, with a feeling that had been sitting on his chest for months. A feeling that his mother had been carefully, expertly cultivating. A fear that he wasn't capable of being what Lily needed. That she deserved simpler. That maybe he was going to fail her and the baby in the way his father had failed his mother, and maybe the kindest thing was to figure that out now, before he wrecked something irreparable. He had been at his mother's, not answering his phone, having what he thought was an important internal crisis. He had not known Lily came to the door. His mother had not told him. When he walked into the penthouse and found it too quiet, he figured she was still sleeping. When he went to the bedroom and found the bed made and undisturbed, he figured she'd woken early. When he found the note on the kitchen counter, his brain still hadn't caught up to what was happening. The note was 4 sentences. I went to your mother's last night. She locked the door. I'm fine. The baby is fine. But I can't keep standing outside locked doors waiting for you to let me in. Minus Lily. He stood in that kitchen reading those 4 sentences for a long time. Then he called the hospital, because he knew her. He knew that I'm fine, when written by Lily Mercer, meant she was anything but. Northwestern Memorial confirmed she had been admitted. She had already been discharged. Her phone went to voicemail. He went to his mother's, and Gloria Voss, to her credit, did not lie. When Damien stood in her kitchen and asked her very quietly if Lily came to the door last night, she said, yes. And you didn't let her in? He said. She needed to understand. She was 8 months pregnant, he said. He didn't yell. Damien Voss almost never yelled, but his voice had something in it that his mother had never heard before. In the rain, at night, alone, and you locked the door. Damien, I didn't tell you, he said. You let me sleep in the guest room while she was at a hospital. She was fine, Gloria said, and her voice had the slightest defensive edge to it. That is not the point, he said. He left. He spent 4 days trying to find Lily. Her phone was disconnected. She had not gone back to the apartment. She was not in Knoxville. He checked, physically drove there, and knocked on the door of the apartment above the shop her friend now ran. No one had seen her. She had disappeared, completely, quietly, deliberately, the way only a person who had spent a lot of time being careful and self-sufficient knows how to do. He hired a private investigator on the 5th day. The investigator checked everything: social media she no longer posted on, old addresses, friends from college she'd barely kept in touch with. Nothing. Lily Mercer had simply decided to stop being findable, and she was very good at it. 3 years passed.
Not fast, not like a movie montage where time skips and everyone looks slightly different and there's a song playing. Slow, a day at a time. Damien went back to work because work was the only architecture his life had outside of her. He closed the merger. He opened a new office in Dallas. He bought a house in Chicago, a real house, not a penthouse, because at some point he had decided the penthouse was not a home and he needed to stop pretending. He did not date. People tried to set him up, his partners, his friends, eventually even his mother, which, given everything, took a particular kind of nerve on her part. He said no, not because he was being dramatic or punishing himself. He just couldn't. He thought about the coordinates engraved in a ring he no longer had, sitting on a finger somewhere he didn't know. He thought about the way she'd looked at him over a hot chocolate on a cold day by the lake. He thought about 17 minutes in the rain and a locked door and 4 sentences on a piece of paper. He thought about his daughter, who was out there somewhere, growing, learning words, taking first steps on a floor he'd never seen. He thought about all of this, and he kept moving, because that was the only thing left to do. Don't go anywhere, because what happens next in Batch 3 is the twist that changes everything. You're not ready. Nashville in the spring was something else entirely. It was the kind of city that looked casual on the surface, cowboy boots and neon signs and music floating out of every cracked window. But if you paid attention, you could see that underneath all of that, people were building things, quietly, steadily, on their own terms. Lily Mercer had built something. After the night at the hospital, after writing that note and walking out of that penthouse, she had driven, very carefully, 8 months pregnant and exhausted, to the home of her college friend Darla, who lived in a suburb of Nashville, and had, when Lily called from a gas station parking lot and said only, "I need somewhere to go," said, "I'll leave the light on." No questions, just the light on. She had her daughter 6 weeks later. She named her Rose because Lily's grandmother had always said, "A lily is lovely, but a rose has thorns. Give your daughter both." Rose Mercer came into the world on a Tuesday morning in December, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that were unmistakably, completely, almost painfully her father's. Lily looked at those eyes in the delivery room and felt about 12 different things at once. She allowed herself exactly 1 day to feel all of them. Then she put them away in the place where she kept things she couldn't fix yet, and she focused on the small, warm, real, present thing that needed her. She found a shop space on a side street near East Nashville, a small, slightly crooked building with good light and reasonable rent, and a landlord who didn't ask too many personal questions. She signed the lease when Rose was 4 months old, carried the baby in a wrap while she painted the walls, set up the same mason jar display she'd had in Knoxville, and wrote new hand-painted letters on the new window, "Lily's Blooms." Because some things don't change, and maybe that's the point. The shop did well. Better than she expected, honestly, because Nashville was full of people who wanted flowers, for weddings, for apologies, for thank yous, for no reason at all, except that the world was hard and flowers were small and beautiful, and they helped. She hired a part-time assistant when Rose was 1 year old, a retired teacher named Beverly, who had kind eyes and zero patience for nonsense, and who immediately appointed herself Rose's unofficial grandmother. Beverly watched the shop on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons so Lily could take Rose to the park, and she always had snacks ready for when they came back, and she told Lily approximately once a week that she was doing better than she knew. Rose grew. Fast, like they all do, but still fast. She started walking at 11 months and never really slowed down. She talked early, clearly, constantly, narrating her own life in the third person, explaining the names of flowers she'd learned from watching her mother, asking questions about everything with the specific intensity of a child who had decided the world was interesting and intended to learn it all. She was funny, deeply funny, in the way that small children sometimes are when they haven't learned yet that the things they say are surprising. She told Beverly once, very seriously, that roses were basically sunflowers with a better personality, and Beverly nearly fell off her stool. She had Lily's warmth. She had Lily's habit of finding everything around her worth paying attention to. But those eyes were entirely her father's. Lily did not talk about Damien, not to Darla, not to Beverly, not to anyone who came through the shop. She had made a specific, deliberate choice to not let what happened with him define how she talked about the world, or herself, or Rose. She didn't tell Rose that her daddy was a bad man, because she didn't think he was. She didn't tell Rose dramatic stories about what had happened. She just said, when Rose started asking the kinds of questions 3-year-olds ask, "Your daddy lives somewhere else, and I will tell you more when you're bigger, but what you need to know right now is that both of us love you very much." Rose accepted this the way children accept things, completely for now,
with the understanding that she'd be back with follow-up questions. What Lily had not done, and this was the thing that would matter enormously later, was to tell Damien about Rose. She hadn't called, hadn't written, hadn't sent word through Marcus or anyone else. She had stayed gone, because staying gone was the only way she knew how to heal without being interrupted by the thing that hurt her. Was it fair? She asked herself that sometimes at night, after Rose was asleep and the shop was quiet and there was nothing left to distract her. She had a complicated answer. She had a, "I was in a hospital bed alone and 8 months pregnant and nobody opened the door" answer. She had a, "He didn't come after me and he knew where to look if he really tried" answer. She had a, "I needed to build something solid before I let anything shake it" answer. She had a lot of answers. She wasn't sure any of them were entirely right, but they were honest. On a Tuesday in April, 3 years and 4 months after the night at the hospital, Damien Voss walked into Lily's Blooms in Nashville. He didn't know it was her shop. That part is important. He was in Nashville for a meeting. His firm was looking at a mixed-use development near the Gulch, and he'd flown in that morning, and his afternoon was free before a dinner with the developers. He had gone for a walk, the way he'd learned to do in the years without her, because walking helped him think, and think was all he really had anymore. He turned a corner on a side street near East Nashville and saw a shop with hand-painted letters on the window, Lily's Blooms. He stopped. His brain did something strange. It sort of held very still, the way a person does when they're trying to determine if what they're seeing is real, or if they've finally lost it entirely. He pushed the door open. The shop smelled of rain and roses and something warm he couldn't name. It smelled exactly like a flower shop in Knoxville had smelled on a morning that he took a wrong turn.
Behind the counter, half visible between a cascade of yellow tulips and a row of mason jars, was a small girl, maybe 3 years old, very seriously arranging sunflowers in a vase that was almost as tall as she was. She had dark hair. She had her mother's nose. She had his eyes. He didn't move. He wasn't sure he could. The little girl looked up and regarded him with the expression of someone who was deciding whether he was worth her time. Then she said, very clearly, "Are you here for flowers?" He stopped. He cleared his throat. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I think I am." "We have sunflowers," she said, pointing at the vase in a tone that suggested this was a significant offering. "And roses, but the roses are grumpy today." "Grumpy?" he managed. "They're not opening right," she explained patiently. "Mama says it's because the weather changed too fast. Flowers don't like surprises." Something moved across his face, something large and uncontrolled that he didn't have a name for. "Your mama's here?" he asked. "She's in the back," said the girl. Then she tilted her head. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Damien." She considered this. "That's a big name," she decided. "It is," he agreed. "I'm Rose," she said, and turned back to her sunflowers, done with the formalities. He was still standing there, frozen completely in the middle of this flower shop, when Lily came through the door from the back room carrying a tray of small white flowers, talking over her shoulder to someone he couldn't see. "Beverly, can you check the order that came in? Because I think they sent us carnations again, and I specifically said—" She turned around. She saw him. The tray did not fall. She did not drop anything. Lily Mercer had very good hands, but she went absolutely still in the way that a person goes still when the world has just done something that their brain hasn't processed yet. They looked at each other. 3 years and 4 months, 1,000 miles, a locked door, a hospital, a note, a little girl who looked exactly like both of them. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Then Rose, without looking up from her flowers, said, "Mama, this man's name is Damien. He thinks sunflowers are yellow." "They are yellow," Lily said, automatically, still looking at Damien. "Obviously," she said, exasperated. Damien made a sound. It might have been a laugh. It might have been something else. He wasn't entirely sure himself.
Beverly appeared from somewhere. She always appeared when she was needed, like a small, sensible miracle. Took one look at the two of them and the child between them, said, "Rose, sweetheart, let's go water the ferns," and had Rose out of the room before another word was spoken. The shop was quiet. Damien looked at Lily. He looked at the door Beverly and Rose had just gone through. He looked back at Lily. "She has my eyes," he said, quietly, not an accusation, just a fact landing heavy and enormous in the middle of a flower shop. "Yeah," Lily said, "she does." "How old?" he started, then stopped. 3, 3.5. He nodded slowly. He looked at the floor, then back at her. "I looked for you." She said, "I know." "How do you—" She said, "Marcus told me, eventually. He found me about a year after. He said you'd hired someone and they couldn't find anything, and you were— He said you were not okay." She paused. "I asked him not to tell you where I was." "Why?" Damien said, not angry, just raw. She was quiet for a moment. "Because I needed to know I could stand up on my own before I let you back into anything. And I needed you to figure out, without me standing in front of you making it easy, what you actually wanted. Because every time I was in front of you, you could just look at me and feel things and call that enough. And it wasn't enough. It never reached the part where you chose me when it was hard." He didn't argue with that. He couldn't. "I know what my mother did." "Do you?" she said. "I found out that night," he said. "I went to her the next morning. Lily, I didn't know you came to the door. I didn't know she locked it. I was in that house thinking I was having some private crisis, and you were at a hospital." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "I have not forgiven her for that. I want you to know that. I have not, and I won't." "Damien, she robbed me of something," and his voice was very steady but very certain. "She made a decision that was not hers to make, and whatever happened after, however much I failed you in ways that were actually my fault, that night was her doing, and I need you to know that I know that." Lily looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "I believe you." He didn't ask to see Rose again that day. He asked if he could come back. She said she needed to think. He said okay. He went to his developer's dinner and sat through 2 hours of conversation about square footage and market projections, and he heard approximately none of it. He booked a hotel in Nashville for the rest of the week. He went back to the shop the next morning. Not to the shop exactly, but to the coffee cart across the street. He sat there with tea, because old habits, and he didn't go in. He just was nearby. Lily saw him from the window. She didn't say anything, but she didn't tell him to leave either. On the 3rd morning, she came out of the shop with 2 cups of tea and sat down across from him. "Rose asked about you," she said. He looked up. "She asked if the man with the big name was coming back. She said you looked at her sunflowers like they were important." He didn't say anything. "They are important to her," Lily said. "She takes them very seriously." "She's extraordinary," and his voice did something complicated on that word. Lily was quiet for a moment. "Damien," she said, "before anything else, before I figure out any of what this is or what it means, I need you to understand something." She looked at him directly. "I am not the same person who stood outside your mother's door in the rain. That woman waited. I don't wait anymore. I don't wait for locked doors to open, and I don't wait for people to decide if I'm worth choosing. If you're here, actually here, then say so. If you're not sure, go figure it out first and come back when you are. Rose doesn't need almost, and neither do I." He held her gaze. He said, "I'm sure." She studied him. "You have a lot to make up for," she said. "I know." "Not just the night at the door," she said. "All the small things before it, the pulling away, the listening to your mother instead of me, the pause on the phone when I told you about the baby." He winced at that. "You remembered that." "I remember everything," she said quietly. He almost smiled, just almost. He stayed in Nashville. Not permanently, not right away. He was still running a firm in Chicago, and there were things he couldn't just put down. But he rearranged. He cleared his Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. He flew into Nashville on Monday nights and flew back on Friday mornings, and he was in that city, present and consistent for 3 months before he ever asked for anything beyond what Lily offered him, which in the beginning was not much. Coffee across the street, a conversation here and there, the occasional moment where Rose included him in something, showing him a new flower she'd learned the name of, or telling him at length why she preferred yellow flowers to red ones. Red is too loud, she explained with great authority. Something moved across his face, something large and uncontrolled that he didn't have a name for. "Your mama's here?" he asked. "She's in the back," said the girl. Then she tilted her head. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Damien." She considered this. "That's a big name," she decided. "It is," he agreed. "I'm Rose," she said, and turned back to her sunflowers, done with the formalities. He was still standing there, frozen completely in the middle of this flower shop, when Lily came through the door from the back room carrying a tray of small white flowers, talking over her shoulder to someone he couldn't see. "Beverly, can you check the order that came in? Because I think they sent us carnations again, and I specifically said—" She turned around. She saw him. The tray did not fall. She did not drop anything. Lily Mercer had very good hands, but she went absolutely still, in the way that a person goes still when the world has just done something that their brain hasn't processed yet. They looked at each other. He brought Rose a book about flowers, a big illustrated one with Latin names and growing conditions for every species, and she received it with the gravity of someone accepting a sacred text. "This has ranunculus in it." She turned pages carefully. "It does," he said. "I love ranunculus," she said, and then looked up at him with her father's eyes and said, "Do you know what they mean?" "I don't," he said. "Mama says they mean you are radiant, like you glow." He looked at Lily over Rose's head. Lily was not looking at him, but the side of her mouth moved. He took them, both of them together, to the Nashville Farmers Market on a Saturday in June. Rose wanted to see every single stall. She examined vegetables with the same intensity she gave flowers, questioned a man selling hot sauce about his process. But how hot, she demanded, deeply suspicious, and ate approximately 1,000 samples. Lily walked beside Damien with her hands in her jacket pockets and said, "You're good with her." "She makes it easy," he said. "She makes it easy for people she likes. She is not easy with people she doesn't. Beverly told me." Lily glanced at him. "When did you talk to Beverly?" "She came out to get coffee one morning while you were with a customer. She had opinions." "She always has opinions," Lily said. "She said, and I'm quoting directly, 'If you mess this up again, I will personally plant you in the ground like a tulip bulb and water you twice a week until you figure yourself out.'" Lily laughed, really laughed, the kind that surprised her, the kind she couldn't control. He looked at her like that sound was something he wanted to hold on to.
In July, he took them to the ocean. Lily had never taken Rose to the ocean. There had always been something to do, some reason it hadn't happened yet. And Rose's response to seeing the Atlantic for the first time, standing on Folly Beach outside Charleston, South Carolina, in a yellow bathing suit she'd picked herself, was to go completely silent for 30 full seconds and then turn to Damien and say, "It's too big." "It is," he agreed. "I like it," she decided, and ran straight at it. They spent 4 days there. They built sandcastles. Rose was an architect about it, with very specific structural requirements. They ate shrimp from a takeout place on a picnic table, and it was messy and perfect. One evening, while Rose slept in the rental house, Damien and Lily sat on the porch with the sound of the water in the background and talked, really talked, the way they hadn't been able to in 3 years of distance. He told her about the years without her, not the business parts, the actual parts, the empty apartment, the house he bought because the penthouse felt wrong, the way he kept a single black-eyed Susan in a glass on his desk until it turned to dust and he finally threw it away. She told him about the hospital, about driving alone in the rain, about the way she'd felt writing that note and the way she'd felt leaving it and the way she'd felt on the highway heading south, alone, 8 months pregnant, terrified, but also, strangely, certain. "I knew I would be okay," she said. "Even then. I didn't feel okay, but I knew I would be." How? He asked. She thought about it. Because I had made it through everything before, she said. Grandma getting sick, the shop, all of it. I knew how to build things from nothing, so I built. He was quiet for a moment. You built better without me than I did without you, he said. Not bitter, just honest. Maybe, she said, but I wasn't happy without you. I was okay. There's a difference. He looked at her. Are you happy now? He asked. She thought about it seriously, the way she always thought about everything. I'm getting there, she said. He nodded. I'll take that, he said. Now, Gloria. Because that story was not finished, and Damien, even while he was rebuilding things in Nashville, had been working on something in Chicago that Lily didn't know about yet. A month after he found Lily and Rose, Damien had sat down with Gloria. Not for a fight, he was past wanting a fight. He wanted something more specific. He wanted answers. He wanted to understand fully why his mother had done what she had done. Not the surface version, not she wasn't good enough for our world, but the actual version. And what came out in that conversation, slowly, reluctantly, over 2 hours in her mother's kitchen, was something he had not expected. Gloria had known someone like Lily before, years ago, before Damien's father, before the Voss estate, before any of it. There had been a man she loved, quiet, gentle, not from her world, and she had married him against her family's wishes, and they had been happy, genuinely happy, for 11 years, and then the pressures of a life he hadn't been built for had gotten to him. The business stress, the public scrutiny, the weight of being in a world that never quite felt like his. He had left. Not dramatically. He had just slowly stopped being present, and then he had gone. That man was not Damien's father. Damien's father, Gerald Voss, came after. Stable, powerful, suited for the life. But Gloria had loved the first man the most. And she had spent 20 years telling herself she had protected him by not making him stay. And then she had spent 20 years watching her son fall for a girl who was warm and gentle and not built for the sharp edges of Damien's world, and every alarm inside her had gone off at once. She had not been malicious. She had been afraid. Afraid for her son, filtered through 30 years of a wound she'd never properly healed. That is not, Damien said quietly when she finished, a reason to lock a pregnant woman outside in the rain. No, Gloria said. Her voice was very small. It's not. It doesn't fix what you did, he said. I know, she said. But I need to understand what you're going to do about it, not with me, with Lily and with Rose. Gloria looked at her hands for a long moment. I'd like to meet her, Rose. A pause. If Lily would allow it. That, Damien said, is entirely Lily's decision. He told Lily, all of it. Everything Gloria had told him, clearly, without editing or softening, because he had made himself a promise that he was going to stop handling things by deciding which parts Lily needed to know. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. She hurt me because she was scared she was going to lose you the way she lost him, Lily said finally. Yes, he said. That's telling off. Then, that's still not okay. No, he said. But it's something I can understand, she said, very slowly. Not forgive, not yet, but understand. He nodded. She wants to meet Rose, he said. Lily looked at him steadily. Rose is mine to protect, she said. I'll think about it. I'm not saying no today, but I'm not saying yes today. Fair, he said. And if she ever does anything that makes that little girl feel like she's not enough, that's the last time, Lily said, very quietly, but very clearly. Agreed, Damien said, without hesitation. Lily thought about it for 6 weeks. Then she called Gloria herself. The call lasted 45 minutes. Damien was not on it. He did not ask what was said. When Lily came and found him afterward and said she can come to the shop on a Saturday and meet Rose, he just said, "Okay." "I'm not doing it for her," Lily said. "I know," he said. "I'm doing it for Rose, because Rose deserves to know where she comes from, all of where she comes from." "You're extraordinary," he said. She looked at him. "I know," she said, which made him smile. Gloria Voss came to Lily's Blooms on a Saturday in September. She wore a simple blue dress, not her usual armor of tailored power, and she brought a bouquet she'd actually assembled herself, which was not great, honestly. The stems were uneven, and the colors were a little chaotic, but she clearly tried. Rose received the bouquet with complete seriousness, assessed it, and said, "The carnations are unnecessary." "Rose," Lily said very quietly. "They're just taking up space," Rose explained earnestly. "The dahlias are doing all the work." Gloria looked at this child, this small, serious, dark-haired child, with eyes she recognized, and her face did something complicated and enormous, and she pressed her hand very briefly to her mouth. "You're right," Gloria said, steadying herself. "The carnations were my idea, and I should have listened to the florist." Rose looked at her with a slightly more respect. "Are you Grandma Gloria?" she asked. Gloria glanced at Lily. Lily gave a small nod. "Yes," Gloria said, "I am." "Mama said you live in a big house," Rose said. "I do," Gloria said. "Do you have a garden?" Rose asked. "I do," Gloria said. Rose turned to Lily. "Mama, she has a garden." "I heard," Lily said. "I feel like we should see it," Rose said, with the air of making a very reasonable executive decision. Lily looked at Gloria. Gloria looked at Lily, and something passed between them. Not warmth, not yet, but the possibility of it. The first very small step toward something that might, eventually, with a lot of time and a lot of patience, become okay. "Maybe," Lily said. "Someday." Damien and Lily went on a date in October, just the two of them. Beverly had Rose for the evening and was almost certainly spoiling her with movies and excessive snacks. They went to a small restaurant in East Nashville with string lights on the ceiling and a chalkboard menu and the kind of atmosphere where nobody was trying to impress anyone. At the end of the night, walking back to her car, Lily stopped on the sidewalk and looked up at him. "I never stopped," she said. "Just that." He understood immediately. "Me either," she said. "I tried," she said with great feeling, which made him laugh. "So did I," he said. "It didn't work." She shook her head slowly. "You're really lucky I'm a reasonable person," she told him. "I know," he said seriously. "Every single day." She looked at him for a moment longer. "Don't make me stand outside any more locked doors," she said. It was gentle, but it was a door of its own, one she was leaving open for him to walk through right. "Never again," he said. "I promise you." And this time, it didn't sound like a boardroom answer. It sounded like a man who had spent 3 years learning exactly what he was promising. He proposed again in December. He didn't plan a big thing. He planned a small thing because he knew her. He made her tea. Finally, he had learned her exact preference, a very specific ratio she had never had to teach him. He had just paid attention. And he put it on the counter of the flower shop.
Not the same ring. A new one. He had thought about that for a long time. He could have gotten the ring back. He'd been tempted to hire someone to locate it because he was Damien Voss, and he could. But he decided that this version of them was new enough to deserve its own ring. He'd gone to a jeweler in Nashville, a small place on a side street, and he'd picked a simple oval diamond in yellow gold with an engraving on the inside. The engraving said, "I know now. Choose you every time." Lily picked it up and read the inside and looked at him. "You're not doing the coordinates again?" she said. "I thought about it," he said, "but I wanted something that was about now, not where we started." She turned the ring in the light. "We started somewhere good," she said. "We did,"
he said. "But where we are now is better." She looked at him. He looked at her. And she knew in the specific way that you know something when it has earned itself, not because it felt right, but because it had proven right, slowly, in every small way, over every hard month, that this was real and she was ready for it. "Ask me properly," she said. He got down on one knee without hesitation, right there in her flower shop, in the soft light, surrounded by mason jars and sunflowers and all the things she'd built from nothing. "Lily Mercer," he said, "will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, simple and clear and sure. Rose found out the next morning when Lily was making breakfast, and Rose noticed the ring while Lily was handing her a plate of eggs. Rose grabbed Lily's hand, examined the ring extremely closely, then said, "Is that Damien's?" "It's mine," Lily said. "Damien gave it to me." Rose appeared to be running calculations. "Does that mean he's going to be here all the time?" she asked. "Most of the time. Is that okay?" Rose considered this with great seriousness for approximately 4 seconds. "He knows about flowers," she said finally, which was apparently her highest form of approval. "He does," Lily agreed. "Okay," Rose said, and went back to her eggs. The wedding was small. They got married in April, the following spring, in a garden outside Nashville, a small place with stone paths and wildflowers that Lily had found and immediately said yes to because it looked like something her grandmother would have loved. 30 people. Beverly cried. Marcus, who had kept both their secrets for 3 years and somehow survived it, gave a toast that was 3 minutes long and made everyone laugh and then cry and then laugh again. Rose was the flower girl. She had requested to carry sunflowers specifically, citing that roses were too expected given the names involved, which was a level of self-awareness for a 3-and-a-half-year-old that made the officiant lose her place briefly. Gloria was there. She sat near the back, and she was quiet, and she watched her son take the hand of the woman he'd chosen, the woman he should have chosen loudly and clearly from the beginning, and something in her face that had been held tight for a very long time seemed to finally, slowly let go. After the ceremony, she found Lily on the edge of the garden a moment before the music started. "Thank you," Gloria said, "for coming back into his life." "I didn't come back," Lily said, kindly but honestly. "He found me." Gloria nodded. "Yes," she said, "he did." A pause. "He looked for a long time." "I know," Lily said. "I'm sorry," Gloria said, "for the door." Lily looked at her, really looked at her, in the direct, complete way she looked at things she wanted to understand. "I know you are," she said. "I'm working on the rest." It wasn't a full forgiveness, it wasn't a clean ending to that part of the story, but it was something, a seed in ground that had been frozen for a long time. And Lily, of all people, knew how to tend things that took time to grow. They bought a house in Nashville, a real one, with a real yard, with a garden that Lily was already planning, and a room for Rose that Rose designed herself. She requested a sunflower mural, and she got it, and a porch where Damien sat on weekend mornings with tea, and Lily sat beside him with her planner, and neither of them needed to fill the quiet. Rose became Rose Voss Mercer by her own insistence because she had given it serious thought and decided that both names mattered, and she intended to use both, always, forever, a decision she communicated with the legal certainty of someone who was going to be a force in the world. Damien took her to her first day of preschool in September. She wore a yellow dress, carried a backpack shaped like a sunflower, and walked in the front door with her father's confidence and her mother's warmth, and did not look back. Lily watched from the car. Damien walked back and got in, and they sat there for a moment. "She's terrifying," he said. "I know," Lily said, with complete pride. He looked at her. "Are you happy?" he asked, the same question from the porch in Charleston. This time, she didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, "I actually am." He reached over and took her hand. She let him, and they sat there, the two of them, in the morning light outside a preschool in Nashville,
while their daughter, who carried both their names, went and made herself known to the world. It wasn't a perfect story. It had a locked door in it, and a hospital, and 3 years of missing, and a woman's fear doing enormous damage, and a man's silence doing nearly as much. It had wrong turns and wrong timing, and the kind of hurt that doesn't heal clean. It heals crooked, with a scar you can feel on cold days. But it also had tea at the right temperature without being asked. It had a little girl who knew the meaning of ranunculus. It had an ocean seen for the first time, and a ring with words earned honestly, and a garden where 30 people watched 2 people choose each other properly, finally, in the light. It had Lily Mercer, who built things from nothing, who never stopped being someone worth choosing, who had learned the hard way that the door you deserve will not be locked to you by the person who truly loves you. And it had Damien Voss, who had started paying attention in a flower shop in Knoxville and never actually stopped. That was enough. More than enough. That, it turned out, was everything. If this story got you in the feelings, drop a comment below telling us whose side you were on and when. Were you Team Lily from the start? Did Gloria's twist change anything for you? And if you want more stories like this, real, complicated, emotional love stories that don't go the way you expect, hit subscribe because we drop new ones every week, and you do not want to miss what's coming next.